In this video, I'll be showing you how to create an Evernote account for each student. That way each student has a unique sign-in and password to use Evernote either online or on their iOS device. To do this, I'm going to start out talking about a little bit of a trick with Gmail. One of the reasons I want to talk about this is that to create a lot of accounts online, if your students are under the age of 13, they need to have parental consent in order to register for some of the online services. So this is kind of a way to create an account for a student, but they are not actually giving out any personal information, as well as they do not actually end up with an email address. Sounds kind of tricky, but let me explain. So what I did for my students is I created a generic Gmail account that only I as the teacher have access to. So the students can try all they want, but they're not going to get into this email account because I'm the only one that knows the password for it. So with this, it's just, again, ipads1f@gmail.com. So I'm going to go ahead and sign into this Gmail account. Helps if you put the right password. Alrighty, so as it connects, third time's a charm apparently. So you can see here that it's logging into the generic Gmail that I've created. Now, the one thing with Google and Gmail is that you can do a couple different things. Let me access the Drive folder here and show you what I'm talking about. So again, with the Gmail, you can see I don't have any email in there yet, but with Google Drive, I'm going to create just a Word document to show you what I'm talking about as I talk about it. So we're going to be talking about two big things here. First off, we're going to talk about how to use the trick with Google, as well as how you can create labels to help manage any email that does come to your Gmail account that you've created for that generic account. So you can see here I'm going to create a document. So the one thing with the Gmail is that you can kind of trick Gmail into thinking that you have more than one email address. So for example, what that means is if I had the original ipads1f@gmail.com. Now, let me show you a bunch of other variations. If I put a plus sign, and let's say I put the number 1, you can see now these are two different Gmail addresses. But the thing is that Gmail reads the second one with that +1 as still being this first Gmail address. So even though it's ipads1f+1, any email that is sent to ipads1f+1 is still going to go back to the same exact generic address I created in the beginning. So I can continue to do this. So we can do ipads1f+2 at Gmail, and I can continue to do this. So this could be for student 1, this could be for student 2. So now each student has a specific email address that will allow them to log in to some accounts that you create for them. But then again, they cannot actually log into this account and send any email because they do not have the password to get into any of these. Again, the only way to get into these is through this first primary generic address that, again, only the teacher has the account. So now that I've got two generic email addresses created, now I can go about creating accounts online. So let's say I go to Evernote and I wanted to create an account. Well, here's where you need to put your email address. So what I would do is I'd put at ipads1f+1, because again, that is for this first student, ipads+1@gmail.com. Now for the username, what I did is I just put my class code, which is 1F, and then I put 1 after it. Now it's going to pop up and say it's already been taken because I've already created this. And then here again, you can go ahead and set the password and finish the registration process. So let me show you what this will look like now that I log in. So this is for each student to have their own account. Now that student must log in with that same email address. So student 1, again, would log in with this +1. So student 1 and only student 1 would be able to log in. That student would have his or her own unique password. So this student would then, if I could keep my password straight, this student then would be able, with his or her own specific password that only he or she knows, they would be able to, my goodness, there we go. So you can see now this is what the student's individual file looks like. You can see here, again, that was that username that I chose, 1F1. It'll show you, if I go to the account settings, right here is that email that they are using. And here's where they could also go ahead and change their passwords if they needed to. So that would be what you would do to set up an account for each student. So then again, I would log out, and then I'd have to create a new account. This one would then be iPads 1F plus 2 now, since this is for student 2 at gmail.com. The username 1F, my class code, number 2. You can see that it's available because I haven't made one yet for that student, and then I could go ahead and I could choose the password for that student. One thing, as you do this for each student, you're going to want to create a specific password for each student. That way that kids do not know each other's passwords. So again, you could continue with this process. I did +1, +2, I could go +3, +4, really to as many students as you needed. Again, that's a way that you can give the students an account, but it does not actually give them an email, because again, they have to log in with this generic one that you created to start, and only the teacher will know that. So let me go back. The second part of this was talking about the labels. Now, just to monitor and make sure that students aren't trying to use this email address that you've created for them to try and send emails, which again, they're not going to be able to, but just to kind of monitor that stuff to make sure that, oh, I created an account with this, and to make sure, not that Evernote would, but if for some reason that this email address got sold off to somebody that wanted some contact information to continue to solicit information to, this address, you want to monitor and make sure nothing like that's happening. And an easy way to do that is to create labels. So you can see here I have a label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this label 1, you can see there's nothing in that label. But let me show you what labels actually do here for you. Let me get in here. So here are the labels, and you can see that down here I have a label, iPads 1F. That's just to maintain all of those different additional Gmails that I've got that I could use. So this one, if I was to show you what I did with this, you can see I've got the label name. It's going to be nested under iPads 1F, but it's also going to have a few other additions to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new one just to show you what that would do. So if I create a new label, let's say that this is going to be, let's do 21, and we'll nest it underneath iPads 1F. I'm going to click create. So now what it does is it gave me 21, and now what I'm able to do is I can take and put a filter on. So what I do with this filter, as you can see here, I have a whole bunch of filters already created. But what I want to do is I want to create a new filter. So down here at the very bottom, create new filter. And what I'm going to do is I want it to be that anytime any of that email that comes to 21, I want to make sure that this, if anything ever comes to this, it's automatically going to get labeled with that 21. So I'm going to create the filter with this search. Now what I want to make sure I do is I want to apply the label. which would be right here, is at 21. So what it's going to do now is anytime somebody tried to send an email to that iPads1F plus 21 at Gmail, is it's going to end up, if it got emailed, it's going to show up in 21. So to show you an example of this, let me compose a message and show you how this would look. So again, let's say that some random person got a hold of iPads1F plus 21 at gmail.com and they want to email that email address something. So now that got sent. Here's my generic Gmail account that, again, it's logged in as iPads1F at Gmail. This is only the teacher account. Nobody else is going to have access to this account. So what that lets me do now is if I go into my Gmail, you can see that right away in my inbox I have a message. And you can see that it's labeled iPads1F and it's got that number 21. So this message was supposed to get sent to that student that is the 21st student, and I can click down here on the label iPads1F and you can still see 21 has one new message. This will let the teacher log into this generic account that the students do not have access to and monitor any email that is trying to get to any of those students. And again, the students aren't going to get any emails because they do not have the password to log in. So I can go and I can click on this and see if it's an advertisement or what exactly it is that's getting sent to that student. If needed, if it's stuff that's not appropriate or if it's stuff that's going to be an issue, you can just delete that and go ahead and block anything that comes to 21 and give that student a new number. So again, this was a way that you can start off by making one generic account. Then what you can do is just add the plus sign and a number, and then the plus sign and a different number for each student. That will let you create a Evernote account for each of your students. If they're under the age of 13 and they need an email address, this is a way to do it where the student still does not have an email address, even though it appears as they do. Again, this email address that they used only gets sent back to, once again, that generic email address that only the teacher has access to.